What's up, guys? This is Darwin, host of the Contagious Thoughts podcast, and I really hope you guys enjoy the show today. Now, if you're listening while you're working out or you're going for a run and you want to add a little beat to it for a little extra motivation, definitely check out Podbeat. Podbeat is a free mobile app that lets you add any style beat to my podcast or any podcast for your workout. It's easy to do, it's free to download in the App Store, and I think I sound pretty good with a little hip hop beat behind my voice, but let me know what you guys think. So, even if you have an Android, go to the Google Play Store. If you have an iPhone, go to the App Store, and it also works really great for audiobooks too. Okay, enjoy the show. And we're live. All right. Man, yeah. Well, I have to say, welcome to the Contagious Thoughts podcast.
Contagious Thoughts.
That's right. That's right. This is a podcast where people who believe in turning dreams to reality share their thoughts. And you might ask, why the name? And that's because we believe that thoughts filled with purpose are contagious. And today I have a very special guest, and I was already excited to have a conversation with this gentleman. But as I researched and just as I do my typical preparation for these conversations, I just got more and more excited the more research that I did. And I think the listeners, you guys are in for a treat, and you're gonna see why I'm so excited to have this gentleman on today. So in front of me, I love to give people their flowers when they're on the show. So this is a well-experienced product designer, creator of Park and Jungle, amongst other things that we're gonna get into. Park and Jungle, I guess my version of it, and he'll correct me if I butcher anything or say anything incorrect. But this is a mobile barbershop that brings the men's grooming experience to you. Instead of you having to go to it, it comes to you. And this is for individuals as well as for corporate groups, which is crazy. I definitely want to talk about that. But he's also a recipient of the Satellite Fund that gives grants to creatives to explore the reach of their art and their discipline. And I think I need to apply for that myself. And he's just an inspiring creative, an entrepreneur. And I left my phone call that I had with him as a better person with a lot to chew on. So, ladies and gentlemen, present to you Mr. Tyler Shaw. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, man. It's quite an intro. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well deserved. Well deserved. And honestly, I hope that my version of Park and Jungle was a good an accurate depiction. But I would just love. I mean, so first of all, I'll give a little bit of background. I was scrolling through LinkedIn and I saw somebody post about Park and Jungle, and immediately I was like, wow, this is something different. It's one thing to have a great concept. It's another thing to have a great concept and execute it very, very well. And I think that you've done both of those, and so I'm just curious. I'll give you the floor for a little bit. If you could just describe just the process of creating Park and Jungle, and you can fill in any gaps of that I may have left out, as far as just what it is and why you created it. But I'm curious about your process and kind of how it came about, and just I guess where the concept originated, like where this idea came from, the moment, if you can remember, the moment it popped in your head.
Yeah. So I heard a barber one time say, the only thing that's changed in barbershops over the last 100 years is the size of the TV and the color of the paint on the wall.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
for me, being in a space where I was constantly in different shops, the business model typically varied between either booth rent, commission, or you were a W-2 employee. There was not much change in the way in which the shop was utilized.
Yeah.
And so, I always thought about being in a space where you could use the environment of the shop and the clientele and the people that you meet
Yeah, yeah,
to really build an experience, not only that's just unique, but allow people to see the shop as a form of community. And so
yeah,
thinking about Punk and Google as a mobile barbershop, one of the things that I kind of I thought through was just like, I think it was back in 2020,
yeah,
kind of like the height of the pandemic. I was in a
yeah,
space where I was thinking about how can I not only serve the clientele that I have, how can I go directly towards ownership, but also how could I create a unique experience that allowed me to kind of build my own clientele. So,
yeah,
I'm a
yeah,
big fan of the idea of like, you only need 1,000 people,
yeah.
or 100 people, depending on what your price point is.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
and I had already proved in the barbershop that I could amass a clientele of 1,000 people. And so I just wanted to kind of figure out if I could take that inventory myself and
Yeah.
apply like almost like a startup mindset towards it, I could put myself in a position to where I could really scale something powerful.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So I love what you said that not much has changed in barbershops aside from the size of the TV and the paint on the wall. Cause like yeah,
Yeah.
it's a business that it's a service that has always been needed and continues to be needed. I even if one day they have robots that can cut hair, it's still like I'd rather go
Yeah.
to a human because of the experience that I have when I'm in the shop that a robot can't replicate, you know? And so
Definitely.
it's tried and true, has always been needed and will always be needed in my opinion. And I think that's amazing. Um and so from the time that you had the concept, like how long was it before you started testing the concept to where you started actually like implementing it, like you had the van, you had the you know what I mean, you're kind of rocking and rolling.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say about a year, year and a half.
Okay.
I think, I mean, once you try things out, I kind of test in the shop with
Yeah.
the clientele that I had. One of the nice things about having a clientele as a barber is a lot of times guys will let you test things out when they trust you.
Yeah,
So,
right, right.
you know, I, I shipped this idea of doing a subscription with some of my clients, and they
Yeah.
all seem to love it. They all seem to kind of be in a space where they're like, "Yeah, I'm cool with that." So I looked at a couple of price points. Um, at the time, I had been doing some stuff. The website was live, and I was just in a space where I was like, if it stays in my head, it remains an idea.
Mm,
And at the end of the day, businesses succeed, businesses can fail, but you want to make sure that you kind of leave no stone unturned.
yeah.
And so I think for me personally, with this barbershop thing, it's not a quick money play. It's not something that when the next trend comes up, I'm going to jump into SMMA or something like that when you see it on
Yeah.
social media where it's just like, you know, people switch their niches every time something says that you can make $10,000 a month off of it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
for me, I need to run the full gamut of the barbershop experience so that even if someday comes where I'm like, hey, this no longer works with the business model that we're trying to achieve, I still have all the insight, know-how, the numbers, the business strategy. I've already built the SEO and all these other different things so that I'm still in the game.
Yeah, yeah, facts. Facts.
Yeah.
Yeah, cuz I know that like my barber, I trust him and he comes at me with all kinds of ideas and I'm gonna let him
Yeah.
run it. I'm gonna let him, like, and I'm gonna give him my honest opinion and I'll be the guinea pig. Because I love I love supporting entrepreneurs. I also love when people get creative and try new things and they're constantly pushing the culture forward. They're pushing the barbershop culture forward and that impacts me a lot. And they're also pushing just the the entrepreneurship and just kind of on the business front in America, especially as like my barber is also a black male, and seeing him push the envelope forward, seeing you push the envelope forward, I think it's phenomenal. And so the name, I've been racking my brain trying to think about like what the name means. I was looking through your social media, and I see the theme is everywhere. Like the whole like the green kind of jungle theme is everywhere. And then I was like, okay,
Yeah,
park. Park could be like I park the van, I park the barbershop up
yeah,
at your spot. The jungle could be the hair that you have to, I don't know. I wanted to hear from you, man. Like what I was trying to figure it
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah. So I think the name kind of speaks towards how I see the barbershop. And
Okay.
fundamentally, I think of the barbershop like an ecosystem.
Okay. Yeah.
And so parks and jungles are both ecosystems
Wow.
that really just thrive and allow each other to create these interconnected networks. And the same way that I view the shop, it's almost like the experience is stopped at the haircut. But if
Yeah.
you
Okay.
really take a step back and think about it as a cultural cornerstone, especially in the Black community,
Yep.
the barbershop has safe haven. The barbershop has been a networking space. The barbershop has been a media outlet. The barbershop, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I think that the way in which we utilize the barbershop now has stopped at the point of transaction
Hmm.
rather than it being something that could incubate spaces because
Yeah.
a barber is a reflection of his clientele, right? And
Hmm.
so for me, being in a space where I know the type of people that I attract and the types
Yeah.
of conversations that I like to have with my clients, if I can pull in artists, if I can pull in architects, if I can pull in professional athletes, if I can pull in businessmen, if I can pull in
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, pull in venture capitalists, there's no way that I should just be cutting them and letting them walk out the door. There's an
Yeah.
opportunity to allow all these minds to kind of thrive off of one another. And if
Wow.
I do it right, and I built the social capital, the consistency of just a reliable business, I think there's a
Yeah.
play in the future in the long stretches where park and jungle becomes something that's more synonymous with community, and the
Hmm.
barbershop is just a layered aspect of it.
Wow, yeah, that's a really interesting perspective because yeah, you're 100% right. Like there's all these different kinds of people who are coming into the shop, and you are the glue, like you are the central connecting point that's connecting all these people together. So, wow, like why not capitalize on that? Not capitalize in a financial sense per se, but like why
Yeah,
not leverage that, or, fully allow yourself to be that bonding agent, pulling these different people together. And this is a question that I was actually going to ask later, but I'm going to ask it now because you brought up a really interesting topic. And I saw that um there was a, I guess, like a magazine or a newspaper. The way that it was presented, I guess, on social media was like the shop is here. It was like an
yeah,
annual, like an annual magazine, or like like a press release or a newspaper, but it was like it wasn't like a boring traditional newspaper. It was like very aesthetically pleasing, and the images were sharp, and it was like well designed, and it was almost like recreating a newspaper, like but like recreating it to be something new and something better. And
yeah,
the slogan that I saw in there was, "We are authentically documenting barbershop culture." And
yeah,
it was really interesting for me because, one, like a lot of my experience of why I go to a shop, as I mentioned earlier, is not just the haircut or the service that's being provided, but it's also the experience that I have with my barber, the conversations that I have with him, the bond, the connection that I have with him. But it's also seeing my barber interact with the other barbers that are there, and the conversations that happen amongst like the whole shop. And so my question was, how with being a mobile shop, like how you recreate that, or if some of that is lost with the mobile shop, or kind of, now obviously you're making up for it with some of the other aspects that you're doing, like this magazine or whatnot. But I'm just curious, like how, if that was a part of the kind of the forethought, as you were building this, and kind of how you deal with that. Does it feel like a loss, or have you been able to recreate that in some other way?
yeah. I wouldn't say it feels like a loss because you're speaking to a specific type of clientele that wants a service anyway.
Right.
And
Okay. Yeah.
kind of the slogan for Park and Jungle is for people with things to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
love that.
it's
Yeah.
it's a wide catch, right? But I think
Yeah.
that a lot of times we have clients who are coming in and out of town. I got this. I have a guy. He runs a school, but
Yeah.
he's also a pastor, and so
Okay.
he doesn't have time to
Yeah.
kind of visit the shop, wait in line, get on his barber schedule, this, that, and the third. So I'll
Yeah.
just pull up to the house and service him there. But what
Right.
I find that's unique with the newspaper is, man, I receive so many stories. I receive so much wisdom. I receive so much intelligent, knowledgeable conversation from the
Yeah.
clientele that I serve, that for me, I just came to a place where I just started writing it down.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
I think there's like three layers to the way that these magazines or the newspapers are put together. It's one, expressing Park and Jungle as a brand through the visuals and the narratives that exist around it,
Yeah.
the stories of the clients and the patrons. Then I usually pull in someone from a broader network. So in the last, I've called them annuals, but in the
Yeah.
last one, uh, a guy I kind of consider like an OG.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
the global creative for Nike. His name is
Oh
Jason
man, I
Murphy.
saw that. I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so he kind of shared his story and told me a lot of different things. There's some pieces I had to pull out, but his experience with Nike, working on, LeBron campaigns, seeing the conception of the original Yeezys while he was
Wow.
there, and all these different things. It's like, to me, it's twofold. It's just like, wow, that's a cool experience, but
Yeah.
also at the same time, for the youth, for the kids, for the individuals who may come from a place where that stuff is impossible for people that look like us.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are a global creative director for Nike. How is that possible? I
Wow.
think
Yeah.
for me, being that bridge where as a kid you can come into the barbershop, because when I was a kid and I went into the shop, it was Vibe magazines. I saw Nelly
Yeah.
on the TV with the Air Force Ones video. You know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
like a premiere for like what was cool.
Right.
And
Yep.
so
Yep.
if I could take anything from the old shop and relay that to the new experience, I want to make it tangible
Wow.
to where you're talking to your barber and like, wow, you know these people?
Wow.
Wow, like what does that entail? How can I get onto that career path? And so I think, that other layer is factoring this idea of like, how can you incubate dreams? How can you use all
Mm.
your experiences in the corporate world and all your networking that you've done
Yeah.
and create an avenue or a pipeline for young Black youth to be inspired and be motivated and to recognize that there's more out here than hip hop and basketball.
Right. Yeah. Wow. So okay, so you're using I'm sure there might be other things too, but you're using this magazine as the connecting agent for like
Yeah,
all these different people. Wow, man. Yeah, and I think that like when you said when you go to the barber shop, it communicates to kids like what's cool. Like kids are seeing what's on the TV. They're seeing what the adults are talking about. They're seeing what magazines are being laid out on the table, and
yeah,
it's this like melting pot of the culture, like different elements of the culture all in one place, and it almost like sets the standard or like sets the trends of like what's cool, what's acceptable. And so for you to
yeah.
take that and use it to move the culture forward, I think that's crazy. Like I think that's insane, man.
Appreciate it.
And when I was scrolling through and I saw where the gentleman from Nike was, and I got to see a little bit of his story and like what he's accomplished. But oh my gosh, man, like the fact that a person like that is connected to you, even I think
Yeah,
is crazy. And then you can connect this person and his story and what he's been able to accomplish to other people to inspire them. I think that's amazing. you know. And
Yeah.
I'm curious too, like, as we're talking about, like having conversations with clients and being this anchor that is kind of a grounding agent, or a connecting agent to other people. I know you got a lot of feedback when you were testing the theory or testing the concept, and
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what some of that feedback was, and what was some of the considerations that you had to, I guess, just think through or process through when you were coming up with the concept. I think you said you had about a year and a half before it was fully implemented, and you kind of hit the ground running with the van,
Yeah.
but I'm just curious, like, what were some of the things, even roadblocks or things that you had to hurdles you had to jump through or jump over to get to fully being implemented?
Yeah, man, that was such a journey.
I
Honestly,
bet.
the activity itself was more so than uh, even the research, because I think
Mm,
people people generally get on board. It's like, if you had a clothing brand, right?
yeah,
Or perceptively look at the way that, like, social media has kind of turned into this space where people are no longer bought into brands, they're bought into the individual.
yeah, yeah,
And so when people like you, they kind of just begin to move alongside what it is that you're doing. If you're building a brand, there's a lot of research and there's a lot of effort baked into it and a lot of different things that you have to kind of like scope out.
yeah.
But a lot of the clientele that I had, if I had been cutting them for a year, 2 years, it was almost like, hey bro, like whatever you're doing, like I'm with it. I'm following you
Right,
wherever you go. People have that
right.
barber loyalty.
Yeah,
And
facts,
so,
facts. Yeah,
I've had clients like invite me to their weddings and like
yeah.
Chri on Christmas and my birthday, like, come in with gifts, like, you know what I mean?
Wow, man,
Which is
that's awesome.
it's crazy to me, but, like,
Yeah,
when you take care of people, right, and you're authentic in the way that you communicate with them, you're not looking at people can feel when you're, like, you're just a client, when you're just there for
yeah,
the money.
yeah. I
So
believe
for
it.
me, it was just the repetition of taking care of people over time set the platform to where the research, it was just me simply asking, "Hey, does this
Yeah,
work for you? This is." And so, I think the hardest part about it was kinda starting to figure out the logistics of the van itself. And so,
yeah,
one of the things that I see now is, like, there's in every state a scattered few of, um, mobile barbershops, but Park and Jungle is completely electric. And
wow,
the the thought that I had behind that is, like, you go out and you get one of these, you know, transit vans, whether it's Mercedes, whether it's Ford, whether it's
right.
Ram, and every time you fill up that gas tank, it's $150.
Hmm.
What would you have to break even per day versus just actually standing behind your chair in the shop? Just
Interesting.
running those numbers itself would kind of put you
Yeah,
in a position to where not only would you have to either charge way above the market, you
yeah,
would be working 10-hour days just to kind of
yeah.
do what you were probably doing in the shop in the first place. So,
Right, right,
what I like about this is that there's a lot of EV charging stations that, it might cost me $5 to fill up,
right,
and
right.
some of them are free in the city. So as of now, that was kind of like my first concern.
Yeah.
Uh, Kind of backtracking a little bit, I got it from Arizona. So I was online around
Okay.
the end of the pandemic, close middle to the pandemic, and then I took a flight out to Arizona to go check it out because everywhere online at that time, I don't know if people remember, but people were taxing for cars, man. Like it was everything was
Yeah,
so
yeah.
um you couldn't get a car. And so there was
Yeah.
3 left on this lot in Arizona.
My
I
gosh.
shipped it back to Ohio. Um and then I started working on it. Like I built it by hand. I was on YouTube for past 3, 4 months before that, trying to kind of come up with a scope of not only what I wanted, but how to execute on it. Definitely don't have a past or a history as a handyman, but it's one of those things where it's like you put yourself in a position and say, "Hey, I can execute on this. I can do this well,"
Yeah.
and you just take it step by step. So I did the framing, put up the
Wow.
walls. did the electricity, did the light, did the plumbing for the sink, got the furniture from IKEA,
Man, you're a
started hanging
handyman
up the
now,
mirrors.
bro. You can
Yeah,
have
you know what
that.
I mean? You
You
turn
can wear
into one
that
over
plaque,
time.
man. Yeah, yeah.
So that was the hardest thing, to be honest
Yeah.
with you, because there were times in that process where I was just like, what did I get myself into?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Yep, yep.
this is too much. This is too much. And you know, I was driving back and forth because I was holding down a full-time job at that time.
Yeah,
Um, which is another luxury. So I think I do a disservice by saying that this was just a smooth straight line. I
yeah,
was in a space where I was working a so my background is in product design. I was
yeah,
working a 9 to 5, and I got into a place where um, this company that I was working for, they just had a lot of internal problems. And so
yeah.
people were quitting right and left. There was a lot of abuse of authority. And, you know, I think for me, typically in those environments, like you may be in a meeting and somebody talks to somebody crazy, and it just may be something that it's like hush hush, nobody speaks on it or whatever.
Right.
And then I think, there was an incident where someone said something kind of off the wall to me that was a executive or senior or whatever. And I
Mm,
kind of called him out on it in the meeting. And I said,
yeah,
hey, listen, respect me as a man first, like because I would never speak to you like that. I hate when
right.
people talk to people because you hold a title some type of way.
Mm,
And
yeah,
so you get put on a chopping block and you get put in a position to where um things can really start going left for you. And so
yeah.
in this time period, I want to set the framework of just saying that I was in a space where I was consciously in the back of my mind saying, I only have 2, 3 months left here.
Mm,
It's seemingly getting worse. I need to figure this out now.
I got you.
So me
I
going
got
out
you.
to Arizona, me coming back, me figuring this all out, I kind of lived pretty frugally. I didn't really spend too much of the money I was making. So I was in a space where I had saved up enough that if anything happened, so be it.
Right.
And so once I finally left that job, um, and this is kind of a testament to faith, I
Yeah.
think that I was in a space where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just keep working on the van. I'm gonna take this leap. Kept working on the van. 3 months later, you know, by the grace of God, another job opportunity showed up.
Wow.
And that carried me through to where I could kind of finish paying off the labor, right?
I
So,
see. Yeah.
what I kind of pull from that is that, and I just had this conversation the other day, is a lot of times you'll hear people's story and they'll tell you like, yeah, I just did this, I did this, I did this, and boom, it was there, right?
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
never share with you the stress, the
Yeah.
frustration,
Thank you for saying that, man.
sometimes even the anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
being an entrepreneur and having to make split decisions in
Yeah.
the midst of things that don't look like they're gonna go your way. And so
Yeah.
I think more so than the research, more so than the work, you gotta have the tenacity
Hmm.
to stand in the middle of what you're believing is going to come to fruition without having the actual evidence. And
Wow.
sometimes life can be actually going completely opposite to what you believe is going to be happening. And you just got to be able to weather the storm.
Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna be chewing on what you just said for a little bit, man, because that, like, when I, so first of all, there's like what you mentioned, the tenacity and the grit, but that is really difficult when everything in front of you is pointing towards like you're wrong or like this thing is not going to work out.
Yeah.
That's like, man, that's hard, man. And it's like, especially because you're going to have people around you, whether it be family or friends, that are like, "Hey, what are you doing, man? What's going on? Like, are you still going to be pursuing X, Y, and Z even though these things are like going the opposite of what you said they were going to, going to do or how they were going to go?" And it's like
Yeah.
you feel like you don't have a leg to stand on, or like you're like, yeah, well, this is gonna work, guys. Like, trust, believe. but you have no leg to stand on because you have no proof yet. You have no,
Yeah.
like, you just have a dream, you have a vision, and you see it, but getting people around you to see it, and sometimes even getting yourself to keep the faith or keep, like, your head just believing that it's gonna happen is hard, it's tough, and
Yeah.
I love what you said about being transparent about the journey, like, what the journey was actually like. It's one thing
Mm.
to just
Yeah.
say, "Yeah, well, went to the bank and got a loan." I had
Yeah.
I,
Right. Right.
put the idea past a few people, then I started building it, then started making money, and it's just like that. You can do it too, and it's like, well, I'm sure if I tried to do it too, like, it wouldn't go like that because it didn't even go like that for you. You're not
Yeah.
giving me the full story,
Right.
and so, I know
Yeah.
even for myself, like, I try to be transparent, like, with my journey, which is why, like, I can't always I try to do it on the show, but it's also why, shameless plug for the Patreon group that I have. It's $5 a month, but I'm able to share a little bit more detail about, like, what's going on behind the scenes with the journey of building what I'm building, even building this podcast and the company outside of this podcast. So I love what you said there, man. And I think there's the concept and there's building the concept, but I think I said it earlier in the interview that if we take Apple, for example, like
Mhm.
Apple, they have a really dope product. Like, they have computers, phones that are very powerful, have a lot of capabilities. Even when I export, my podcast interviews on my Lenovo computer versus on my wife's, MacBook, it's like 24 to 36 hours versus like an hour and a half on hers. Like, it's just a powerful computer, right? They make a great product, but they don't just make a great product. They make a dope product, a great product that's beautiful. Like, it's very
Yeah.
aesthetically pleasing. Like, the design behind it, it's very simple. It's quality. It's pleasing to the eye. Like, you look at it, you're like, oh wow. Like, when I see an Apple commercial and how they market their material, or you just go into the Apple store, like, it looks beautiful. Like, it looks good. You almost don't want to put a
Yeah.
case on your phone because the phone looks good. And I feel like there's not I don't see every brand that's out there doing the both of those. A great product that's also beautiful. And I have to give you your props, man, because you developed something that not only is, from what I can see, a great product, but it's also beautiful. Like, it's very aesthetically pleasing. And I know that your background is product design, and I know you're very creative and artistic and have a lot of abilities there. But I just wanted you to speak to the process of not just creating what you created, but making it beautiful. Like, all through your Instagram, and you guys should definitely go follow him. I'm gonna link his info for his social media and his website in the show notes. So definitely follow him, check his stuff out. But when I scroll through your Instagram, there's a certain aesthetic to everything that you post. It's all tied together. There's nothing that, like, stands out like a sore thumb or looks out of place, and it's all very intentional. And I see that not only on your social media, but just with your business, with the van as well, and how you market it. So, if you could just speak to what that process was like, implementing this and kind of executing it in the way that you've done.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. First and foremost, man, with Apple, I wanna kind of give a tidbit is that Johnny Ive, who was I believe he was a creative director for Apple, if that's not his role, or
Okay.
chief design officer or whatever it was.
Yeah.
There's a designer, his name is Peter Rams. And so Johnny Ive oftentimes referenced this designer, Dieter Rams, who, for designers, he's Michael Jordan, you know what I mean? He
Yeah.
he he
Yeah.
has this championship rings. And so if you look at Dieter Rams' work, that is the DNA of Apple's design.
Wow.
And so if you go back, Dieter Rams had 10 principles, 10 rules for
Yeah.
good design. And so he really outlined and kind of gave the manuscript for how to make timeless, aesthetically pleasing, functional work. And,
Wow.
I think that's something that every brand should employ. And so
Wow.
thinking about how that translates over to Park and Jungle, I think about not only from a business perspective, how to create actual systems so that you can get consistent results over a period of time.
Right.
Um, you have to expose yourself to varying levels of taste
Hmm.
because you can have a skill set, but if you don't have the taste to bring that skill set up to a different level, you kind of find yourself in the mix, right? It's the
Hmm.
separating factor for a guy like Kanye West, where
Yeah.
he has a taste level that
Yeah.
supersedes what people can even see sometimes. And so
Hmm.
when he puts it
Yeah.
out, it's almost like, oh, yo, this is ugly. What is this? Like when the Yeezy season one dropped, right?
Right. Right. Yep.
And then
Yep.
you watch how the industry kind of takes form because his mind was so far in the future with his
Mm.
designs.
Yeah.
And I think that with Park and Jungle, one of the things that I try to employ is not only the taste of things and exposing myself to the highest level of quality when it comes to visualizations, designs,
Yeah.
music, museums. I also think about the systems, right? And so as a business, do I have a brand guideline in place
Mm.
where I
Yeah.
know what my colors are, I know what my palette is,
Right.
I know functionally how to use all of those different elements.
Yeah.
And if I can't do it myself, am I putting myself in a position to where I can find creatives who can do that type of work that align with the aesthetic that I'm trying to achieve or pull off?
Yeah.
And so systems are super important. And I think at this point in time, I try not to put myself in the mindset of like, I'm the CEO of Fark and Jungle, I'm an employee. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
when I run it like I'm an employee, I'm showing up. I have OKRs. I have, okay, this is what we're focused on this quarter. These are the goals for the week. And it puts me in a place where I can be a little bit more meticulous on how the brand is presented because I've already defined the DNA and what it is that I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Something people can do is maybe put together, you know, 3 to 5 brands that they like or they respect, right?
Yeah.
And just study them. Go buy the coffee table book of your favorite brand. Go buy
Yeah.
uh autobiography of your favorite designer and read their philosophies on life. And when you dive in and you get a clear picture of what it is that they set up and the why behind it, it makes your brand so much more clear.
Yeah. And I'm gonna have to take that advice myself for one. um, and I mean part of the reason why I say that is because like I love I love to create, and I always want to be pushing myself to be a better creative. And I think that studying other brands or studying other great designers and the work that they've put out and some of their guidelines and principles is only going to help me to be a better creative myself. And I didn't go to art school. Like I have some people that like they went to art school and they've learned a lot more than I've learned. Just like in the space that they had more time to develop their their art and their discipline, and they have a
Mhm.
lot more technical skills than I might have. I went to engineering school instead. Should have went to art school, but went to engineering school, and that served me in other ways. But
Yeah.
for me, I want to take that advice, and I hope that some of the listeners take the advice as well. And I have to say before we move on that I was scrolling through your Instagram and I saw this like comic. It's like this comic that you created. It was like not a comic book, but like it was like it was as good as what I would see like on in the store on a shelf, like next to the top, like people that are into like the what are they called? The manga or what I'm talking about? It's like
Yeah.
I think it's like Japanese comics, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
like it
Anime.
was good,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, like anime, there we go. Like it was good,
Yeah. Yeah.
man. And I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand how did this come about, man? Like, how did you create that from scratch? Or did you have somebody help you with that? Like, what in the world, man? It wasn't. I was not
Yeah.
expecting that.
So the answer is gonna shock you. Um, but a little background on it is that, man, I'm always in a space where I'm super curious about emerging technology.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, because I've made Park and Jungle my focus, I don't have as much exploratory time as an artist individually. And
Right,
so
sure.
when I do something, I try to make sure that it revolves around the brand or doesn't, or at the very least, it doesn't take away from it. And
Right, right.
so when Mid Journey came out, I saw people creating Instagram profiles with AI characters, but everything was individual. Everything was like a one-off picture of the prompt that they came up with, and so on and so forth. But one of
Yeah.
the things that I wanted to try was like, could AI be used to maybe glean a particular artist's style
Hmm.
and create a narrative or a story? So that
Wow.
maybe on the surface it's not creative in the sense that, it's simply a prompt,
Sure,
over
sure.
the course of 50 he's mastered this art style or whatever, but um the creativity comes from the storytelling and then
Right.
applying that to the lens of the brand of Park and Jungle. So in short, to
Yeah.
kind of answer your question, it was AI.
Sure.
I
Yeah,
put the
yeah.
story I put the story together,
Right,
and I
right.
and I narrated the different prompts and the ways in which the visuals kind of came out. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that
I
was Mid
mean,
Journey.
that's still creating because you have to create the story, and I want you guys to, I mean, not only follow him on IG, but please, like, I'm gonna try to put the date of like when he posted that particular post so you guys can easily find it. I really want you all to check it out because it's literally, if you look through his whole profile, it's taking the aesthetic and the concept of the brand, but putting it into a story and into a comic, or manga or whatever. I'm not versed in all the different terminologies.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not a,
yeah,
I don't follow it myself, uh, but like down to the van in the comic, like looked like your van, like it had the park, on the side. It wasn't exactly, but it like looked like it. And I think too, there's something called prompt engineering, which you guys are probably familiar with, but the AI, ChatGPT or whatever AI technology you guys use, it's only going to be as good as what you tell it, like what you feed into it, like your inputs. And so, you know, prompt engineering is tweaking the prompt, tweaking what you feed it so that it can spit out what you want it to spit out. And so there's still a great deal of creativity that I think goes into that, even if you're using AI, man. So definitely props to you. It was fun to look at for sure, man. It was definitely fun to look at.
appreciate it. Appreciate
Um,
it.
yeah, and you also mentioned in your there's like a post that while barbering is a professional service, that it's also, or sorry, it's mostly an art form. And so
Yeah,
even with just your craft and what you do, like, yeah, you're providing a service, but it's mostly art. And I'm curious, like, your relationship between art and creating and like business and entrepreneurship. Like, if you had the opportunity to go into business, to create a business or pursue a venture that was just strictly financial gain, like, there was no art or creativity or anything like that to it, it was just strictly gonna make you money, uh, would you still pursue it? Or for you, if you're gonna pursue something as an entrepreneur, does it have to have a creative element that allows you to use that, like tap into that side of you? Just curious how you see it, and what's the priority for you, and kind of how you interact with those two spaces.
yeah. You know what? There are some people that can kind of pull it off, where they can go into something purely for financial gain.
Yeah.
Um, But even then, when I say that, there are still some type of like underlying motivational factors that are allowing people to achieve on that level.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship is so hard that if there's not some part of you that loves some aspect of the journey, you're going to quit.
Wow. Yeah.
You can't. I mean, it's like anything else. It's like if you're not motivated to get up and go to the gym, are you going to keep coming back to it consistently
Right.
enough to
Right.
get the results?
Right.
You know.
Right.
So for me personally, there has to be some element of purpose from a
Yeah.
spiritual lens.
Yeah.
Um, but from a personal lens, I think we're all here for something, man. And
Yeah.
we all
Absolutely.
have we all have abilities. We all have a perception on the world that if we tap into, we can really make things better for people. One of the things that I
Yeah.
kind of think about back to the AI conversation is when I look at the way society is moving right now, um, I see that VC dollars typically go towards ease of life products,
Hmm.
things that make life easier. And so we've heralded people who lean into human laziness as genius.
Yeah.
So you look at
Yeah. Wow.
Uber, you look at Grubhub, you look at all these tech companies, their
Wow.
their format or their design is to make life easier. It's making us lazier in a sense. But
Yeah.
that's what the dollars go towards. You look at what AI is doing. It's stripping creativity away. It's they're
Yeah.
trying to put it
Yeah.
into robots and make servants and all these other different type of
Yeah.
stuff. So is it genius or is it like, I don't have any other purpose with my intelligence but to create something that's going to try to serve,
Wow.
Because I think the real genius or the real creativity is like, how do you fix homelessness? How do you fix
Interesting. Yeah.
food shortages? If we have that type of
Yeah.
intelligence to be building these things, it's like, what are we really using it for?
Wow. Like, are we using it for good and actually like helping people and like pushing humanity forward, or are we just using it to make things more convenient for ourselves? Like, that's actually very interesting
Yeah,
thought
yeah,
thought to chew on. You know,
yeah,
even for me, like how do I use my creativity? You know, and like currently, I try to use my creativity to inspire. So like this whole podcast is a movement for geared towards dreamers, targeting
mhm,
dreamers to inspire them to make their dreams into a reality, to actually take action to make their dreams a reality, to not allow their dreams to go to the grave with them or go to the deathbed with them without ever actually being lived or experienced. And so,
yeah,
but if I got an opportunity to, I don't know, start, like, say Uber didn't exist, and I had the opportunity to start
yeah,
that, like, would I do that, or would I do what I think is like inspiring and pushing humanity forward? Good question. I don't know. I don't know. That's a
yeah,
tough one because that Uber bread is tempting, you know,
yeah, yeah.
especially how successful it's
And I
been.
think it's what you do with it afterwards. You know, it's
What's
like
that?
you can have you can have a company that's purely about financial gain,
Yeah.
but are you like, is any of that money going towards anything that's relevant in terms of
Right. Sure. Sure.
building?
Yeah.
You know,
And that actually leans into the another question that I have for you, which is when I think about life, and we talked a little bit about this on the phone when we were talking, but when I think about the reason that we're here, and you mentioned a little bit ago too, like we all have a purpose, like something that we're meant to contribute to the world before our last day. And when you think about the idea of just living day by day, just kind of getting by or like getting through each day, mostly doing things that you feel you have to do just because you have to do them. It's expected. You have to work a job, take care of your kids, take care of your family. You have different errands, different responsibilities. but you're kind of in a box that you put yourself into, in a sense, and you have a hard time having the courage to get out of the box, or even having the mentality shift to say, you know what, I put myself in this box, I can get myself out of this box, but just kind of living day by day and just getting through life. That's scenario number one. Scenario number two,
Right.
comparatively, is living a life where you're trying to be in touch with your purpose and why you're here. So you're living in such a way where even if you don't know your purpose, like, you're exploring it. Like, you're trying to walk in step with your purpose. You're walking towards your dreams, and with the hopes of making them into a reality. When you think about just like these two, like scenario number one and scenario number two, you know, initially, my first question on that is, if there's ever a time that you can remember that you were living in scenario number one, and if so, I'm curious what the pivot was like to living more like you are now, like walking your purpose, doing something that you actually care about, that you're passionate about, that you know, like, taking a dream and making it into a reality, like what the pivot was like towards scenario number two.
Yeah. I think I was kind of blessed in and of the fact that I found passion young. So when I
That's
was a
awesome.
kid,
Yeah.
I used to love, so I used to draw a
Yeah.
lot,
Yeah.
and that was kind of like something that gave me the freedom of expression,
Yeah.
um, to even think about the world beyond just getting up, going to school, and all these other different things. It was like I had this secret world to myself that I was able to interact with and
Yeah.
continually challenge myself to get better. Um, so I think beyond that, right? Like if someone is in a place where they're prospectively thinking about, how do I kind of get out of this day to day living? I kind of would say learn how to meet yourself on a deeper level. I
Mm.
think
Wow.
there are things that we've buried over time inside of us. I think sometimes we can, whether it's just a fleeting idea, whether it's like, hey, I think I should be living my life in this way, and I'm just resigned to the fact that nothing is going to happen for me. It
Yeah.
all starts in here. The world is mental. And if we're in a space where
Yeah.
we're like afraid to act upon the ideas and the inner truth that's on the inside, um, you know, our impact is limited.
Yeah.
So I would really just say continually expose yourself to new information, get around groups of people that you find inspiring.
Yeah.
Because it's birds of a feather. If you're consistently around people that aren't pouring into you, are negative,
Yeah.
or
That's big.
every time you have an idea, they shoot it down or minimize it or any of these different types of things.
Mm.
That's another part of the journey. It's like red pill, blue pill. It's like,
Yeah.
do I sacrifice the internal truth that's burning, the thing that's telling me, hey, I need to do this. I see this in my mind. I
Yeah.
visualize this. I love what this is. I love the potential of what this is. But at the same time, every time I bring it up to somebody, they shoot it down.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love their company so much that being alone and having the focus on what it is that I want to do is too great of a sacrifice.
Yeah.
And so if I never choose to break off, get alone for a season of life and focus on what it is that I want to do, the dream never dies.
Yeah.
The dream never dies. It's with you to the end. The only thing is different is right now it's in front of you. Once it's behind you, it just turns into a regret.
Wow. Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's like which one do you want to feel? The uncomfort or the discomfort of prospectively people making fun of you, prospectively people not getting you, prospectively people not necessarily being on the same page as you, or you being the person in 20 years saying, man, I had that idea. Man, I
Yeah.
could have lived my life this way. Man, I should have went on
Wow.
that mission trip. Man, I should have moved to this state when I had an opportunity. Because guess what? You can always
Yeah,
move
that's
back.
wild.
If the
Yeah.
business fails,
Yeah.
at least you
Right.
tried. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like the relative risk and reward of the outcome of you doing what is in your heart is low when it's in front of you. But
Mm.
when it's something that you can never get back, that hurts. That's gonna
Wow.
hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's people who are listening who needed to hear that, what you just said. Because I mean, like, there's so many decisions. I said this in another episode too, that there's so many decisions that I've made by thinking to myself, like, when I'm on my deathbed, if I get the opportunity to, live a long life, which decision am I going to regret doing more?
Yeah.
Like, which
Yeah.
which path am I going to regret the most? Like, not walking down, and whatever that is, I have to take that path. Because I can't live my life with that. I'm not willing to let myself live my life with that kind of regret because I know that I can't get it back. Like, I know, you know, like
Yeah.
I'm in my 30s now and I know I can never go back and relive my teenage years. I can never go back.
Yeah.
I'll never be in my 20s again. I'll never be able to go back and relive my 20s. I have 3 kids. I have a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old, and like a 2-month-old. And
God bless.
thank you, but yes, it's a, you know, it's a
Beautiful. Yeah.
it's a handful. At the same time, it's a major blessing, and I know, like, I look back at pictures of my wife and I were just like we were together, but just no, we weren't having kids yet, and I'm like, I know that we will never have that time back. And I'm not saying I want
Yeah.
to go back there. I'm just saying, I mean, sometimes I miss it, but like, I know that we can never go back in time. We don't have a time machine. And so it's like, that's part of what inspires me to want to inspire other people to make, to want to explore their dreams, explore, like, what are the things that, like, when you think about the life that you want to live, are you currently living that? Like, are you already doing that? And if not, let's figure out the steps to start walking towards that. Not that you have to, have it figured out and in place tomorrow, but it's like, let's start walking towards that because you got one life. And when time is gone, it's gone, and we don't know if we're going to get to make it to the deathbed. We don't know when our last day is going to be. So why not live? Like, why not really live? You know?
Yeah.
Um, and, and speaking of, I think that it's helpful when people get to just take away some practicals from people who have either done things or people who have done a lot of studying. And I know when we talked on the phone that you mentioned that there was a group that you were a part of that I guess they kind of study a bunch of different businesses out there, like businesses that have succeeded, failed, and looking and kind of exploring the common threads between the succeeding businesses, the failing businesses. And so I know that there's some knowledge that you have that I think that our listeners could benefit from, as far as what are some of the common themes or the common threads, or I guess common denominators with the businesses that succeed and the ones that don't, from just your experience and your observations.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's a mix of things. I think first and foremost, it's the systems that you employ in your business.
Yeah.
A lot of entrepreneurs never make it to the place where they get to work on their business. They have to continually work in their business. And
Mm.
so some of the systems that you could set up. So for example, to kind of make it a little clear, if I had an agency, design agency,
Yeah.
a, a lot of times as a founder or the CEO of your company, your time is split between managing client expectations, doing the work, pitching work, creating decks, all these other different things. This is like a small agency if you're like, 5 people or less or something like that.
Yeah.
The systems that I'm referring to are, you know, creating processes where you use AI on your website to answer any of the small questions that a client may have coming in. Having a form that they fill out rather than having to have 3 or 4 meetings to understand the scope of work that they want.
Yeah.
Having a payment processing system that is more quick and efficient than getting 50% up front and then having to chase the client for 2 months to get your extra 50%, right?
Yeah.
And for something like that, you could look up, how do I productize a service, right?
Yeah.
And it will put you in a space or mindset where you begin to understand how these systems can be employed to kind of be more effective in giving you your time back so that you can look around the corner. You're not in Q1, you're looking in Q4 and beginning to plan there. And
Yeah.
so I think that a mix of that, the type of network that you have. So, one of the things that I'm doing, Park and Jungle, is attempting to not only build a clientele, but getting involved in business networks in Greater Columbus. And so sometimes the deals that happen in those spaces and the conversations and the people that you meet, um, even if it's pay to play, right? It might
Yeah.
be $1,500 out of your pocket, but if you can see some form of benefit from maybe getting in some type of like small business council, or you know even if they have like a small business incubator locally,
Yeah.
get around people that can show you some of the hurdles that you'll incur along your journey, because to be honest, you could have a business that's going to succeed, but because you don't have, and this is just about the tenacity, or some of the roadblocks consistently surprise you. We talked about this earlier, just the idea of like,
Yeah.
when things go left and when things don't look like they're going to work out anymore, some people quit, you
Yeah.
know? But if you
Yeah.
had mentors, people around you to say, no, actually, this is pretty common. This is something that
Yeah.
most people go through at phases in their business. It would alleviate the fear and help you to get into strategy mode so that you can kind of execute on what you need to do next.
Yeah.
Because I would say those two things for me. If you have a great network, mentors, and some systems in place,
Yeah.
your customers or your clientele is going to show you what you need to do next.
I like that. Like, yeah, feedback loops from your clientele or your customers.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, network and systems. I need to check my systems, man. I need, and this is actually something that like my yeah, I mean, like my wife and I were talking about this, and she was like, "Hey, like 'cause this is a bit like I run this podcast. Like it's not, like I just added one person to the team um that will be taking on like more and more stuff, but it's mostly me, and my wife is starting to help out with projects now. Now that she's like, she's had the baby and she's like recovering more and stuff like that. It's been a couple months now, so she's able to get back into her normal swing of things. But she was just like, "Hey, like when you have a guest that comes on the show, like do you have any type of like standardized email or like outlining the process, or do you have any?" And I was just like, "No, I just like I send them an email, I type it up, I have a pre-production call." And she was just like, "Yeah, you got to streamline this. Like you got to like and it has me thinking about like, yeah, like what's my process? How can I save time and energy? Even like now as I get into doing more like video work, and again like I'm having multiple calls with people, helping somebody with like their website or whatever. It's like I'm having multiple meetings with them to figure out, okay, what's the scope of this project? But I could, like you mentioned, I could have a form. I could have where I get the bulk of it, and then I might still have a call with them, but now that call's a lot more efficient because I already have most of the information from that form that they filled out, and I'm already mostly clear. I get to ask some clarifying questions. It's one meeting instead of like 3 or 4, you know? So I love
Right.
that. And kind of going off of this, like that how to and practicals, I noticed that for Park and Jungle, you have a pricing model, on the website. That's like kind of like a subscription model, and that pricing model is going to speak to a specific client, to a particular client, or avatar, or target client.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, as a entrepreneur, especially if you're new, which is, a lot of my listeners are newer to the entrepreneur space. Uh, Along with that comes a person being new to their craft. So if you're a barber, or if you're in real estate, or if you're doing video, or some type of like creative art, whatever it is, a lot of people find themselves in a space where they're starting a business, something that they're very passionate about and they love, but they don't have like years and years of experience. And so the pricing that they want to have, and maybe even the price that they need to have to support themselves, to support their family, they feel insecure with pricing
Mhm.
at that, because they don't feel like they have the experience to back that up. And so I'm curious what your, I guess, like your, mindset, or approach to how you set your pricing. If there's any, market research that goes into it. Um, and one more thing I want to add on to that question is, and this is more so for the listeners, that you can have you can have your target audience, and then you can have the price that you want to charge, but the target audience has to be able to afford your service or your product. And if they
Right.
can't, you either have to change your product or service, or change the price, or change your target, like change your target customer. And so that's the reason why I'm asking this question, because all those things have to work together. So I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Man. So I think as far as skills versus value goes, I'll use a hip hop analogy. Um, if you watch hip hop closely, you will see that there's certain artists that have the flexibility to drop every 3 years, every 5 years, maybe every 10 years if they want, right? And still be
Kendrick.
received in the public like it's a gift.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
have artists who have to drop every 6 months or they fell off.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
think that in business it's similar in the sense that you, depending on how hard you beat your craft,
Mm,
it gives you either a stretch of time or a value associated with your service that you can kind of employ into the market and people will respect it, right? And
wow.
so
Yeah.
you have to ask yourself, am I someone, am I Two Chains or am I Kendrick? Am I, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And if I'm in that space where, you know, what I'm making, I know I'm new to the game. Maybe it's a money grab. Maybe it's something that I'm passionate about, but I just don't have the skills yet. You got to respect the market and you
Yeah.
have to be more consistent in the way that you show up, not only from a pricing perspective, but the visibility. But
Mm,
if you've come into a place where you dominated the market, you're giving a value, a service that's completely different, um, and you're offering that value at a premium. You just need to align yourself with the right people, and your
yeah.
business can be sustained. And so
Yeah.
when I started Park and Jungle, it was so funny because my first two clients, it was a guy that I was cutting maybe every 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
He introduced me to his cousin, and his cousin, he owned a club. And so this guy was paying me $100 twice a week to come out and line up his beer.
Uh, Wait, twice a week, you said?
Twice a week. Twice a week, just one client.
Okay. Was
And so
okay.
so prospectively, you could look at that two ways, right? You're like, man, this is a gold mine. I need more people like you,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, or you could say, hey, you know what? I appreciate what you're giving me, but let's cut that price in half
Mm.
because I'm not concerned with having you for 6 months, and then when you've uh, consumed the experience, you no longer want to kind of be a part of it
Mm.
because you've looked back and you've seen all the money that you spent.
Mm.
I don't want to be able to sit here 10 years down the line and have a comfortable price point where if you got it like that, okay, cool.
Right,
But
right.
respectively, let's figure out how we can kind of stretch this out. And in business terms, it's your LTV, you know,
Mm.
your lifetime value of your consumer.
Mm.
So I'm
Yeah.
looking to create 10-year stretches of predictable income with each client that I have.
Mm.
It's great for the one-offs. People want to get one service, or people that want to tip you heavy on the first time, or somebody that's coming in from out of town. That's great.
Right.
But the hardest thing about bartering is that your income is not predictable. You know, it's
Yeah.
you have a book of business, then you may see this client twice a month, you may see him 3 times, you may see him once, you may see him not at all because he's on vacation or whatever. But if I put
Yeah.
in place a subscription service where I've done my market research and I said, okay, most of the high-end barbershops, mid to high range barbershops are somewhere between 35 to $45. Some are at 60. And then I look at the mobile barbershop market and everybody's charging $100.
Yeah.
Could I
Yeah.
feasibly make it make sense to offer you 2 services for $100?
Yeah.
And that only works because the van is electric. Now, if it was, you know
Yeah,
what I
if you
mean?
had to pay for
So
the
it's like
gas, yeah, yeah,
all these different things cycle into like what your price point can be and how you make it. But um, two things I would encourage entrepreneurs to look at is like your LTV and then what they call your churn. So over time, every month, how many customers are falling off your experience. And sure, there's an actual equation to figuring it out. But
yeah,
like if you're in a space where you're trying to enter a market and you're like, man, I believe my price is this, I'm gonna charge this, but you don't have the quality or you don't have the work. I would
yeah,
say definitely try to meet the market where it's at and build from there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You mentioned you're looking at a 10-year client. Like you're like, okay, I want to not just rob your pockets, and
Yeah.
have you, giving me $100 a week or whatever. But I'm looking for the longevity. I'm looking for if you have to change jobs or you hit a tough economic time, a tough financial time, I don't want to be the first thing to go off of your budget where you say, I can't afford Tyler anymore, slash, it's like I want to, be at a comfortable price point so we can this is sustainable long term. And that just speaks to the way that you treat people, the way that you value people and human beings. And there's something that I saw as I'm gonna read a quote from that I saw online uh, that you posted, and you said treat every relationship like you want it to last for at least 10 years. It commands the best of your attention, integrity, and confidence. And I'm just curious, I guess just if you could speak to where this comes from and why you treat people the way you do, because you treat them like they truly matter to you and that they're not just a transaction.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is that what you said exactly. They're not. You know, I think without sounding too I don't know how to put it, but I think a lot of times we're trained to think in these ways where we see people as opportunities and we
Mm,
negate the relationship. And so
mm,
I remember I was probably in my freshman year of college, and I was doing an
Yeah.
internship at this agency. And, this guy, he owned part of the agency. He was a professor, and then he owned like a local slew of coffee shops. And
Yeah.
so I kept my eyes on him. I'm like, yo, this is somebody I need to have some conversations with.
Yeah.
So in the midst of me reaching out to him consistently, I remember a conversation that we had, and he said, treat every relationship like you wanted to last for 10 years.
Mm.
Right? Because not only will you treat the relationship right, and you're not
Mm.
looking for the quick transaction, you may find yourself in a position where you were up when you guys met.
Yeah.
And then the tables turn, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't know where somebody else is going.
Yeah.
And they can be a leveraging point to help you in the future in a way that if you do your part now,
Mm.
you just never know how the cookie
Yeah.
crumbles.
Yeah.
So it's really a position of humility to say, I'm not above you, I'm not beneath you.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that I have right now, I'll share it with you as far as information goes. If you need something
Yeah.
to connect this to somebody, cool, fine. Let's do good business. Let's be
Yeah.
respectful. And at the end of the day, the merits of that, the reward of that, right? Because even if you do get the money in 10 years' time, if you've blown through all the relationships that you have,
Yeah.
what is it worth?
Right.
You
Right.
want your victory circle to be all the people who saw you at the beginning. And so there's just, I guess, concepts that include Koof, morality, respect,
Mm.
dignity, honor, all those aspects still are something that are just as fundamental as how do you make a dollar. And if you can't,
Yeah.
you got to keep those in line with all these other business strategies that you're learning because, you know, look at the examples in the world, of
Yeah.
everybody gets, the truth comes to light. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People get found
Yes,
out.
it does. Yes, it
Eventually.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's interesting. It's like, yeah, people get found out, and it's not just the people who are the predators and
Mhm.
it's like if you're not a genuine person, or you're like your character eventually will be exposed, and like that's not the kind of name that I think any of us want to make for ourselves. Like a
No.
person that's not a genuine character, not a loving person, um, because who wants to be around that? Who wants to work with that? Whereas like the way that there's a quote from someone, I don't know, it's probably like a more common quote, but it's like people might not always remember the things that you say, but they will remember the way that you make them feel.
Yeah.
And I think that the person that said that to me was saying it in regards to kids. Like kids, they're not gonna always remember like what you, I mean, of course they're gonna remember things you teach them, but they're mostly gonna remember the way that they feel around you, the way you make them feel. They're gonna forget a ton of things that you tell them. And it's like the way you make people feel is like really important. And I'm not a perfect person. Like
Hey,
I've hurt
man.
people's feelings. Like
Yeah.
there's some people that don't like me very much. It's that's definitely a thing. But I definitely tried. I definitely put effort and intentionality behind trying to be a loving person, trying to be a considerate person. But to what you said, I want to speak to the point that you just mentioned is valuing relationships and treating people like people and not transactions. And I love that humility mindset of like, wow, even if you know I'm a millionaire and I'm up right now, it's like, hey, the table's my turn,
Yeah.
and
Facts.
like maybe
Yeah.
I'm the more experienced one right now, but then I don't know that the person I'm talking to is the next leader in the space, and sooner or later they're going to be the wealthier one, or they're going to be the more knowledgeable one, or the one that everyone's going to for advice.
Yeah. Yeah. And they'll remember.
Yeah, they remember. they remember. They
Yeah.
remember how you treated them.
Yeah.
For better or for worse.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, man. And with that, I do have a question that I want to give to the folks in the Patreon, and it's in regards to your creative process.
Mm.
So myself as I want to say as a it's weird because I want to say as a newer creative, but I've always been a creator. Like, my whole life, I just didn't lean into it. I didn't explore it. I didn't give it, I guess, enough attention or focus because I didn't even understand what it was, that was there. But I've always loved to create. Like you mentioned, drawing. Always loved to draw. I used to draw cars. I used to practice, man. I could
Yeah,
draw
hell
cars
yeah.
almost exactly, get my shadowing down. Like, I love doing that. And I'm just curious and just your creative process. I saw that there was something that you posted that said like to visit spaces that bring you inner peace. And I'm curious if that's a part of your creative process, or and if not, just kind of what is, and even how you deal with creator's block and things like that. And so with that, it's time to transition
Yeah.
into the no regrets segment of the show.
Okay.
Come on. Hey. And before we get to the no regrets segment of the show, I have just a couple of quick reminders for you guys. And actually, I have 3 favors to ask of you guys. Are you guys ready? 3 favors, just 3. Can you guys just give me these 3 favors? All right. So the first favor is, if you're watching this on YouTube, please just hit the like button. Just like the video, right? That's the first thing. All right. Let me know when you've done that. Okay, cool. Then the second thing is, please scroll down and hit that subscribe button. Subscribe, and then click on the little bell. It's like a little bell, and when you hit that bell, it means that you're going to get notified whenever we drop an episode or we put out a video or a clip. You guys are going to be notified if you just hit that bell. And what that does is you're going to know when we're dropping like really cool and dope episodes. And so you're going to get hopefully blessed by our episodes, and you stay in touch with our community. And it also obviously helps the channel, helps the podcast. This is the last thing. Remember, I asked you for 3. You said 3, right? You guys are cool with 3 favors? All right, cool. The third favor is if you could comment down below. So the one thing that I have been like craving and like yearning for is more feedback from you guys. So I appreciate all of my consistent listeners. We've had listeners all over the world: France, Russia, Australia, Canada, Mexico, the Philippines, Pakistan. Sorry if did I say Sweden already? Sorry if I'm forgetting your country, but thank you guys, from all around the world who've been listening to the show. I see the ones who are consistent. I've seen consistent listeners in France. I really appreciate you guys. Obviously in the United States. But the one thing that I really could use more of is just more feedback from you guys. Like, what do you like? What do you not like? What do you want to see next on the show? What are some topics that you want to see us cover? Maybe even who are some guests that you want to see us bring onto the show that you might know or you might know of. So drop that in the comments down below. It'll really help the show. If you don't want to comment publicly, feel free to just DM me on Instagram, send me a message on Facebook, or go on thecontagiousthoughtspodcast.com, and you can just go hit the contact us, comes right to my email. So thank you guys. Also, make sure you follow Tyler on Instagram, and I'm going to link all his information down below in the show notes. You guys are in for a treat. I mean, if you like following inspirational people who post really inspirational, motivational, and aesthetically pleasing, bodies of work, and I say bodies of work because that's what I feel like his posts are. It's not just like a random post that had no thought behind it. They're very intentional posts, and so I've already followed him. I hope you guys do the same. Lastly, if you guys want to support the podcast, you can support the podcast in 2 ways. The first way is by joining Patreon. It's $5 a month, and for those of you guys who have a little bit more money to spare, I made a $25 a month. That's kind of like a donation level. If you want to just give a little extra to the show, no pressure. Feel free to just do the $5 level, and you get VIP content that's not released to the public. That's the benefit that you get. That's what I can give to you guys, as well as just details about my personal journey that it's tough to share in the public kind of general interview setup. So the second way and the final way that you guys can support the show is you can go to thecontagiousthoughtspodcast.com and buy some merch. So you guys see I'm decked out, with the hat. You guys see I got the I Love the Contagious Thoughts podcast sweatshirt on. There's a hoodie that's actually behind me with the blue light on it. Long sleeve shirts, hats, t-shirts. Check it out. Get whatever you want. They all come in different colors. And then let me know if there's any merch or any content that you guys want to see as well. And with that, let's get on to the no regrets segment of the show. So the no regrets segment of the show is where myself and the guest gets to reflect on the episode and answer the following 2 questions. Number 1, is there anything that you said in the show that you regret saying, even if it's how you said something? And number 2, is there anything that you did not say that you wish you did say? And with that, let's dive in. So I'll let my guest go first. Is there anything that you regret saying during the show?
No, I don't think so. I think,
Okay.
I try to let things come out as natural as possible, and
Yeah.
hopefully there's if nothing else, at least a tiny bit of inspiration somebody can pull from.
Oh man, I think there's already a ton of inspiration that people can pull, man. Absolutely. And for me, I honestly can't think of anything that I regret saying during the show either. I'm grateful for that because, man, I've butchered some intros. I've I've done some, yeah, man. I've pronounced people's names wrong, like all kinds of stuff, man. It's so yeah. Okay, great. That's great. That's great. Number 2, the second question is if there's anything that you did not say during the show that you wish you did say, or that you want to give to people before we jump off.
Yeah. I think beyond just creativity and skills and learning and research and all these different things, my journey has been a product of faith.
Yeah.
God, Jesus Christ, like for me,
Mm,
is a central theme, and
yeah.
without that core functioning and without that navigation system, a
Yeah.
lot of the concepts that may sound new, may be attributed to some of the mentors and the people that I've spoken to over time. I think the reason that they stick and the reason that I'm able to kind of think about service leadership and all these other different things as it pertains to entrepreneurship is that
Yeah.
relationship there. Yeah.
Wow. That's powerful, man. Um,
Yeah.
and that's actually one other thing that I w- I plan on doing an episode in the Patreon on is, and I know some of the different listeners come from different walks of faith. Um, whether they're Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindu, and sorry, something's going on in my throat today, y'all. You gotta give me some grace here. I try to drink water, but it just keeps on coming. So, but I think that it's really crucial to, like, I think that faith in our belief system, even if people are agnostic or atheist, I think that your belief system, it plays a major role in your worldview, into your journey of entrepreneurship. And so I wanna dive more into that um in the Patreon, and do some more content on that. I think the holistic intro is already down. Maybe we bring back Tyler to be able to share more about how his faith impacts his journey as an entrepreneur. And we can all, we can learn, from all this. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing that. And my answer to the question, anything that I regret not saying, or that I wish I did say. And I think that I about said everything. I'm scrolling through my notes here, and I feel like I said everything that I wanted to say. Oh, there was one quote though that I saw on your page that I thought was dope, that I wish I mentioned in one of the responses back to your answers that you gave, and it was a quote by Charles and Ray Eames. The
Mm,
last name is Eames. I'm probably butchering that, as I usually butcher names.
that's fine.
But okay, great, good to know. But it's the quote is, "The details are not the details; they make the design." And like, it's a quote that like caught my attention, but I had to sit and think about it for a second. And I still don't even think I fully understand the quote, because it's like it's very simple and to the point, but also very dynamic, and there's a lot to it, and so it seems like it's even layered. So I wanted to mention that that quote and just give that to you guys to chew on as well. So
Yeah. Shout out Eames. It's another book for research on, man. They made some beautiful furniture over the years. They're like,
oh wow,
one of the greats, definitely.
wow.
Yeah.
That's definitely worth it, and they'll be in my Google search bar
Yeah, yeah.
right after this interview. So yeah, absolutely. Well, hey man, this was a lot of fun. This is one of those interviews. Not every interview is like this, but one of those interviews where I have to go back and listen, like for myself. Like for myself to grow and learn from. So I think that you provided a ton of value today, man, and very grateful for you. I'm glad that when I saw it on LinkedIn, that I just sent you the DM, man. I'm glad
Yeah.
I did, because
I'm
it,
glad
it
you
was
yeah,
it, it was totally worth it, man. And I'm very grateful for you. Thanks for coming on the show.
yeah, appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, man. All right, listeners, until next time, take care, y'all.